Some warnings come too late, others are ignored on purpose. Here, every story begins with a choice to trust, to stay silent, or to pretend nothing is wrong. This channel dives into true stories where danger hides behind familiar faces, where husbands aren't who they claim to be, and where family loyalty is tested by secrets meant to stay buried. You'll hear stories of quiet neighbors with dark pasts, marriages built on charm and lies, and women who survive by playing innocent while watching everything. These aren't fairy tales. They're raw, emotional journeys where betrayal unfolds slowly and revenge doesn't come with violence, but with truth. If you believe the most dangerous people are the ones closest to you, and justice is strongest when secrets are exposed, then you're in the right place. Watch closely. Every detail matters.
He is dangerous, my father said the first night the moving truck pulled up next door. His voice carried a weight that didn't match the calm suburban street or the neighbor's polite smile. The warning sounded old-fashioned, like fear passed down from another generation, and it was easy to dismiss. After all, nothing about the man seemed threatening. Quiet, reserved, always watching but never speaking too much. And my husband laughed it off, squeezing my hand, saying some people just didn't trust strangers. Trust came easily then, maybe too easily. The neighbor waved every morning, helped carry groceries once, and disappeared back into his house like a shadow. Still, my father kept insisting something was wrong. He noticed the way the neighbor never used his real name, how visitors came late at night, how conversations stopped when someone else walked by. Every concern was brushed aside, especially by the man I had chosen to build a life with. That reassurance felt solid, warm, convincing, familiar. Then small cracks began to show. My husband suddenly knew details about the neighbor's schedule. He defended him a little too passionately. When questions slipped out, answers came too fast, rehearsed and smooth. The warning echoed louder each time I noticed the two of them talking in hushed tones near the fence, their faces stiff the moment I appeared. What looked like coincidence started to feel coordinated. The truth surfaced slowly, painfully. The neighbor wasn't just a stranger with a dark past. He was a partner. Business deals disguised as favors, money moving through accounts I wasn't supposed to know existed, plans made behind closed doors that put everything at risk, our home, our future, and my safety. The man sleeping beside me every night wasn't blind to the danger. He had invited it in. What hurt most wasn't fear of the neighbor. It was realizing my husband had weighed loyalty and chosen secrecy. He dismissed my father's warning because it exposed his own. Every smile, every comforting word, every promise was layered over deception. The danger wasn't next door. It was already inside the house. My father had seen it clearly from the beginning. I just chose to believe love was stronger than truth. And that choice nearly destroyed everything. Playing innocent became survival. Confusion was worn like a second skin. Questions swallowed before they could reach the tongue. Smiles stayed soft, eyes stayed lowered, and every careless word spoken around the kitchen table was quietly stored away. Naivety, when performed well, makes people reckless. They speak freely when they believe nothing is understood. The man called a husband began to relax. Explanations grew sloppy, stories changed slightly each time, never enough to raise suspicion, but enough to reveal stress. Phone calls were taken in the garage with the door half closed, voices dropping when footsteps passed by. The neighbor's name surfaced too often, always followed by forced laughter or sudden silence. Acting unaware meant never reacting, never pressing, never letting on that patterns were forming. Listening became sharper, silence became heavier. A glance exchanged between two men across the driveway said more than any confession. Money troubles appeared overnight, blamed on bad luck and poor timing. Receipts vanished. Bank notifications arrived and were quickly dismissed. Trust was used as a shield, and it worked, until it didn't. Pretending not to notice the late nights hurt more than confronting them ever could. There were evenings spent staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, replaying conversations word for word. Every lie carried fingerprints. Every half-truth left a trail. The most painful realization came quietly. The deception wasn't accidental, it was calculated. Protection wasn't for the family, it was for himself. The neighbor wasn't just an outsider pulled into chaos. He was chosen, introduced, trusted. Together they moved money, favors, and secrets, all while promises of safety and stability were whispered at home. The betrayal cut deeper, knowing it thrived on the belief that ignorance equaled weakness. That assumption became their undoing. Documents were photographed, messages were memorized, dates and times aligned into something impossible to deny. Acting innocent kept the doors open long enough to see everything clearly. No confrontation, no scenes, just patience sharpened into resolve. When the truth finally stood complete, it felt heavy but clean. There was no doubt left, no room for excuses, no space for denial. The man who believed deception made him powerful never noticed how closely he was being studied. By the time understanding dawned on his face, innocence had already done its job. Charm was the foundation everything rested on. Friends admired it. Family trusted it. Even strangers felt disarmed by the warm smile, the confident tone, the way promises flowed so easily. Marriage looked secure from the outside. Steady income, shared plans, talk of a future that included children in a home meant to last generations. None of it was real. Bills were paid just well enough to avoid suspicion. Bank statements were explained away with jokes and half answers. When money tightened, blame landed on the economy, bad investments, unlucky timing. Yet expensive habits never stopped. Late nights increased, private phone calls became routine. That charm didn't fade, it sharpened, used to smooth over doubts before they could fully form. Emotional distance crept in quietly. Affection turned performative, offered only when needed. Conversations felt rehearsed, as if lines were memorized ahead of time. Questions about finances were met with reassurance instead of transparency. Trust was demanded, not earned. Behind closed doors, decisions were being made that didn't include the person sharing the bed. The most devastating truth surfaced in fragments. A hidden account linked to unfamiliar names. Signatures forged with practiced ease. Money transferred to support ventures never discussed. Ventures tied directly to the neighbor once dismissed as harmless. This wasn't carelessness, it was strategy. A partnership built on secrecy, designed to benefit two men while sacrificing the future of a family that existed only as an image. Dreams of children were spoken aloud while risks were taken that could leave nothing behind but debt and danger. Promises of protection masked the fact that everything valuable had already been placed in jeopardy. Emotional betrayal cut deeper than financial loss. The realization that loyalty had been redirected elsewhere shattered the illusion of partnership. What hurt most was understanding that love had been used as leverage. Trust became a tool to keep questions quiet. Every smile after a lie felt calculated. Every embrace carried the weight of manipulation. The man called a husband believed charm could bury truth forever. Evidence accumulated patiently. Statements, messages, timelines aligning too perfectly to deny. The lies stacked higher until they collapsed under their own weight. There was no dramatic confession, no apology worthy of the damage done, just exposure. When the mask finally slipped, the future he gambled with was no longer his to destroy. Revenge didn't arrive with shouting or shattered glass. It arrived quietly, carried by documents, timelines, and truths no one expected to surface. Violence was never the goal. Exposure was far more devastating. Dangerous men thrive in shadows, and light was the only weapon needed. Everything started with patience. Every secret transaction, every coded message, every favor exchanged behind closed doors was allowed to continue uninterrupted. The belief that silence meant ignorance gave them confidence. A husband grew careless, convinced charm and authority could erase consequences. He underestimated how powerful truth becomes once fully assembled. Family honor mattered more than rage. That understanding guided every move. Evidence was shared only when it could no longer be dismissed. Financial records reached the right hands. Conversations, once whispered, were repeated in rooms filled with witnesses. The neighbor's carefully maintained distance collapsed as his name surfaced in places it never should have appeared. What they built together, lies stacked on lies, crumbled under scrutiny. Watching the unraveling was painful, but clarifying. The man who promised protection struggled to explain away numbers that didn't lie. The same voice that once reassured now stuttered. Excuses contradicted each other. Loyalty evaporated the moment accountability arrived. The neighbor disappeared first, retreating into the same shadows he thought would protect him. The husband stood alone, exposed not as a victim of circumstance, but as the architect of betrayal. No screaming followed, no dramatic confrontation, just quiet recognition spreading through family and community. Respect shifted, trust withdrew, doors closed that would never open again. The damage they caused could not be undone, but control over the narrative finally returned where it belonged. There was relief in choosing truth over destruction. Blood would have stained everyone involved. Truth only stained the guilty. The future they risked was reclaimed through transparency, not revenge fueled by anger. Their greatest fear wasn't punishment, it was being seen clearly. When everything was finally laid bare, the dangerous men were left with nothing but the secrets they tried to bury, now speaking louder than they ever could. If this story made you pause, question, or recognize something familiar, don't keep it to yourself. Like the video, it helps these stories reach others who need them. Subscribe for more real stories of hidden betrayals, dangerous alliances, and truth-driven justice. New uploads bring new secrets to light. Until next time, remember, sometimes survival starts by paying attention.